Vinaka boxing fans, the time has finally come to do my prediction video for the greatest heavyweight fight that you are all going to see in our generation. I personally believe it will be. And that is Tyson, the Gypsy King Fury, versus Olexander, the Cat, the Cossack warrior, Usyk. I wanted to leave this prediction video until the press conference had been completed and also the weigh-ins. However, I thought to myself, am I going to actually change my mind based on what they weigh in at and based on what's going to be said at the press conference? I mean, we've seen both of them now. We've seen what they look like. But they even took their tops off and posed for photos and video shoots. We've seen their mindset, their behavior in the last few days with the media day and also the grand arrivals. And I thought to myself, you know what, this isn't going to change my thinking, especially around the 4 key areas that I'm going to talk about as to who I think will actually come out as the winner in this fight. So there'll be a lot to cover in this video, and I'm going to try and keep this, nice and clear, try not to yap too much, but I'm going to go into the 4 key areas that I think are going to be important for me to make my decision around who I think is going to come out on top to win this fight. So the first one is the last 4 performances. So if we break down the last 4 performances of the 2 fighters, for Fury, he had Ngannou, Derek Chisora, Dillian Whyte, and Wilder 3. Usyk had Daniel Dubois, AJ, and Derek Chisora. If we start with Fury, in all of the 4 fights, none of them, for me, were highly convincing. In the last 4 fights with Fury, he was dropped 3 times, 2 by Wilder and once by Ngannou. And in the last 4 fights, he had controversial moments all throughout. In the Wilder 3 fight, there was a lot of talk about longer counts. There was the 2 knockdowns, but he came through. He looked slow. He didn't look the same that he had in the Wilder 2 fight. And he looked like he was quite susceptible to the right hands. But he managed to completely change it around with that just sheer will and determination. Against Dillian Whyte, he looked very uncomfortable at the start, especially when Whyte was applying roughhouse tactics and being southpaw. It seemed like Fury's jabs and right hands weren't doing anything to Whyte, and it was the uppercut, which was, everyone knows, Whyte's biggest weakness, that actually finished Whyte off. But leading up to that, the fight there was nothing much happening in that fight. Then Derek Chisora, we all know, whilst he ended up stopping Derek Chisora, that was a ref stoppage, and he couldn't drop Chisora or knock him out, despite his best friend, Joseph Parker, knocking Chisora down like 2 or 3 times a couple of fights earlier. And Chisora was able to still land on Fury and actually get in the inside. And then obviously the Ngannou fight, look, everyone knows that was possibly the worst performance Fury has ever had. He looked out of shape. He didn't look like he was interested. He was missing a mile with his punches. He even threw an elbow that did nothing to Ngannou. And everyone thought Ngannou was like this Terminator. But then Joshua wipes him out in 2 rounds. And not just wipes him out, absolutely destroys him. Yeah. Then Usyk, if we look at Usyk, in his last 4 fights, he's had, obviously, Dubois just recently, the 2 AJ fights, and Chisora. I felt the Chisora fight was the hardest fight that Usyk has had at heavyweight. I went back and watched that fight, and Chisora did so well. I gave Chisora 5 rounds in that fight, meaning I scored it 7-5 to Usyk. If Chisora had landed a knockdown, or maybe 2, he possibly could have won the fight or at least had a draw. But Usyk, for the first 4 rounds, was all over the place. He could not understand how to deal with the size, the relentless pressure, and the power coming from Chisora. Chisora is not a notable power puncher, but he was causing Usyk all sorts of problems. But Usyk showed his class, his amateur pedigree, his boxing skills to come out and win the fight comfortably in the end, even hurting Chisora on occasion. Then he would go on to fight the great Anthony Joshua, AJ, and put on an absolute boxing masterclass clinic in the first fight. He boxed AJ's head off. He hurt him and potentially could have stopped him in the 12th round out of pure exhaustion. That's how exhausted AJ was. And I thought that was probably one of the best performances I've ever seen of Usyk. Then obviously the rematch happened. There was a lot better effort from AJ. However, I still felt that Usyk won the fight by at least 4 rounds, 3 to 4 rounds. And Fury does have a point. In this fight, AJ, when I say here's a point, Fury did say that AJ is a great fighter, but he's quite methodical and just comes forward, puts the earmuffs on. And that's what he kind of did with Usyk. He just tried to move forward. I don't think he threw any feints. And his punch output, it's almost like he's kind of waiting for the right shot to time Usyk. AJ loves to time his shots. He favors quality over quantity, which is, I think, a good quality to have. But if you fight someone like an Usyk who is constantly moving, you're never going to get him. So you better just roll the dice and throw as many punches as you can and worry about blowing your gas tank versus trying to land the right punch, because it's just not going to happen. You've got more chances of throwing heaps of punches and hopefully one lands. And he didn't do that, and he was outboxed. And then, obviously, Daniel Dubois, the controversial low blow. I felt that this fight was a pretty one-sided affair, to be honest, apart from the low blow. I personally thought it was borderline. He was hit on the belt, and it was covering his belly button, but that is the rule, so technically it's still a low blow. But I thought that a lot of other refs would have let that go. And Usyk was even complaining for body shots in the Chisora fight. This guy has a tendency to complain every time he's getting hit on the stomach. He complained in the Chisora fight, he complained in the AJ fights, and he complained against Dubois. And before even milking it, I thought, for 5 minutes. Yep. So that's their performances over the last 4 fights. If I had to decide who performed better, I would have to say that holistically, Usyk's had the better performances over the last 4 fights. He hasn't been legitimately knocked down, and he outboxed AJ phenomenally in the first fight and pretty well in the second fight. So Usyk takes that. Then if we look at the next point I want to talk about, which are strengths and weaknesses, I want to just break down each fighter's strengths and weaknesses. So Fury, for his strengths, his determination, his will. He's always talking about imposing his will on his fighters, his opponents. His powers of recovery, his massive long 85-inch reach, his massive frame and height, 6'9", 6'8", and his size, his weight. All of these qualities, I believe, are absolute golden strengths for Fury. If he uses his size and his reach and his weight properly, he's going to cause Usyk problems all day. But does he have the ability to be able to do that? His weaknesses is he is susceptible to the knockdowns, especially on the top of his head and the side of his head. It seems like anytime he's getting knocked down there, hit there, he's going down. He got hit by Ngannou there. It wasn't even a hard shot and he goes down. The first Wilder fight, he gets a grazing shot to the top of the head, he goes down. This is the third Wilder fight, and the second knockdown, just a tap to the back of the head and he goes down. So does Fury have issues when he's getting hit to the head? He doesn't have issues when he's getting up and fighting on. He seems to have issues being hit there. And Usyk is a masterful puncher and timer of his shots. If he actually times it, he could throw an overhand left or right, hitting Fury at the top of the head and actually knocking Fury out. And the other weakness that Fury has is that he can be clumsy at times and actually can fall over his own feet or fall over his own punches. He lunges in, and I think that's because of his sheer size. Talking about a 6'9", yes, he's great on his feet and he looks great, but still, against smaller fighters, he's still not as coordinated as your Olexander Usyk, the smaller fighters. Joseph Parker is very coordinated. Michael Hunter, these fighters, even AJ's, got better coordination and athleticism, in my opinion. So that's the strengths and weaknesses of each fighter. The third one is around who has the more motivation to win this fight. Well, people, Fury has said from time and time again that it's all about the money. He's in it for the money. He doesn't care about legacy. He doesn't care about Undisputed. That is what Fury is saying, and we can always take what Fury says with a pinch of salt. But the proof is also there. He has done everything he possibly could have done to avoid this fight with Usyk. They tried to make this fight 3 or 4 times, and Fury has always been the common reason why the fight didn't happen. He tried to get Usyk to accept, should I say, a 30% split at Wembley as the unified champion, former undisputed cruiserweight, who had more belts. It's crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. And Usyk accepted, but then he said, okay, now I don't want a rematch now. And it's like, man. Then obviously we had this fight. It was supposed to happen in December last year. They wanted more time. Then in February, they cut. And it's kind of like, I don't believe this fight would have happened if Turki Al-Sheikh didn't come to the party with all the big dough that's being flown around here in Saudi. So Fury's always talked about the motivation for him is the money. And Usyk has talked about his motivation being legacy and being undisputed. So from what I have seen, from what I can gather, it seems to me that Usyk has more motivation in this fight. And I feel like Fury knows there's a rematch. And could this play into Usyk's hands where if he's losing the fight quite badly, Fury's going to be like, well, I've got a rematch. I've made the money. Get paid, get laid, remember? And go home. That's a saying. He hasn't actually shown that in the ring, despite all that in the past. He hasn't shown that. But is this the time now? Because he just knows Usyk is a completely different killer fish. Then the last one is the God factor. Now, as you know, I'm a Christian, but I don't want to dedicate this channel around my Christian beliefs or faith, because this is a boxing channel and I respect everyone else's opinions and religions, but I wanted to bring this factor up because both of them have actually brought this up themselves. They've both said, as Christians, that God will decide who the winner is. Now, I don't agree with that because I don't think that God, one, has any interest in a brutal combat sport and whether someone should win over another person. Don't think God is going to be wasting his time on that, to be honest. And secondly, God is in favor, if it's the God that I follow, one of his sons to another. He's impartial. That is how I've understood it. But if, for some reason, the God factor is real, and one of the two is being chosen, you would have to say that, and it's a quote that I read or heard, one man has Jesus in his heart while the other has him only in his mouth. And the one in the mouth was Fury, and the one in the heart is supposed to be Usyk. Now, I'm not saying I agree with that, because no one can know Fury or Usyk's heart. One, and number two, only God decides who his children are and, where each person is. So I don't necessarily agree with that, but you would have to say that the way that Fury lives his lifestyle, from what we've seen in his documentaries, from what he's said and what he's done, versus Usyk really tries and strives to live that Christian life every single day, from what we can see. And if God was going to choose someone, you would think he would be choosing the person who is quite humble, who is respectful, and tries to live to his standards every day, and perhaps humble the other person, like David was humbled. King David was humbled. If you read the biblical accounts. So that's the 4 reasons or factors that I wanted to consider before making my prediction. So now's the time. It has come for me to tell you who I think is going to win this fight. And I've been going back and forth, and I want to just make things absolutely clear here. I am a huge Tyson Fury fan. Do I agree with all his behavior outside of the ring? No. But who am I to judge him? Because I've done some terrible things as well in the past. And I would never judge another man, because it's not my place. I just love what he does in the ring, and his character and his humor. Excuse me. So I want Tyson Fury to win this fight. I hope Tyson Fury is going to win this fight. And I have always backed Tyson Fury to win his fights. Every other fight that he has. And all my friends and family know this. But I can't believe I'm doing this. I have to go with my head and not my heart. The heart can be treacherous, and the heart hopes and wishes, but sometimes you don't always get what you want. Based on form, based on strengths and weaknesses, based on motivation, and based on character, my decision for this fight, for the prediction or outcome of this fight, is that Olexander Usyk will win by either a unanimous decision, majority decision, or a potential stoppage, be it via the cut or just landing a few punches after Fury goes down and the ref stops it prematurely. I can't believe I am picking against Fury, and I really, really wish that my prediction is wrong, but I've got to go with what I think is going to happen, not what I want to happen in here. The other likely outcome is, I think it could be a draw. So the 2 picks that I have, but the number one I'm going to go with and stick on is an Usyk win. The second one is a draw. And the reason why I'm going with that is I feel in order for Fury to actually win this fight, and why I don't believe he is going to win, is because I feel Tyson Fury has to knock out Olexander Usyk or drop him a minimum of at least 3 times. And I don't think either is possible with someone of the caliber of Olexander Usyk. We've seen fighters be knocked down twice and still win fights. Fury did it against Wilder, and Joseph Parker recently did it against Zhang. So if Usyk could be outboxing Fury, and Fury just lands that good punch and knocks him down, it still won't change the outcome of the fight. If he knocks him down again, it probably still won't change the outcome. He literally needs to knock him down at least a minimum of 3 times to get the judges to make either a draw or a win on points for Fury, or he has to absolutely stop him or knock him out. And I just can't see that happening, people. How I would love to see that happening as a Fury fan, I just can't see it happening. So that is my prediction. I'm predicting Usyk to win this fight. And I wish I was wrong. And I hope I am wrong. But I'd love to know your thoughts. So please leave a comment. Tell me how you think this fight's going to be. And as always, thank you for watching. You're watching Seru Bale's Boxing and Pro Wrestling YouTube channel. Vinaka team.